One of the hardest choices to make in a relationship is whether or not to end it. Ending relationships is a real mind melter. And that's because relationships can define so much of who we are, but also because they are such a steady known in our lives. And on the other side of relationships is a lot of unknowns. And this week, I want to talk about an approach to making big decisions with so many unknowns on the other side of them. Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to things that I've learned from the science of decision making that are just broadly useful in everyday life. And please, as always, remember to like, share, comment, follow, and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm know to send this video out to more people. If you didn't watch last week's video about Aya, just pause this one, go back and watch it, and then come back. All right, so as we discussed last week, the big block that Aya felt about whether or not to divorce her wife Priya was not identity, was not necessarily the vows that she made, but just the uncertainty of what was on the other side. Back in the 1940s, von Neumann and Morgenstern published a book that proposed a framework for decision-making under uncertainty, something they called expected utility. The problem with making a video this week and next week, actually, is that the algorithms limit me to less than 3 minutes. But explaining expected utility takes a little bit longer than that. So what I'm going to do in this video is explain the concept of utility. I'll briefly touch on what does expected mean, on expectation, but I get into that a lot deeper in the blog post itself. That blog you can find in two places: on my website, markschreim.com/blog, or on my Substack, solvingforwhy.substack.com. What I'm about to say is technically not true, so any economists or decision scientists in the audience, just don't come at me for this. But one of the easiest ways for me to think about utility is to think about it as happiness points. To imagine that each of us in our heads has a happiness thermometer. That happiness thermometer goes from 0, which is just abject misery, I'd rather be dead, to 100, which is unadulterated ecstasy. And every choice that I make, whether it's a food that I eat or a job that I take, it gives me happiness points. And everyone's happiness thermometer is different. For me, Fruity Pebbles give me 98 happiness points, and supermarket sushi gives me 24 happiness points. And we can do that for all sorts of things. If I'm considering two jobs, I can assign happiness point numbers to job A's salary versus job B's salary. And the first step in making a consequential decision that has unknown outcomes is actually doing just that. A whole bunch of different ways that you can do it. And when I work with my clients, we work through a pretty formal way of doing that. But one of the easiest ways that you can do it for yourself is just take a line. And on that line, put a 0 on the left and 100 on the right, put an X where it feels right. And Aya has a lot of what ifs. We could assign happiness points to each of those what ifs. What if I stay and the marriage becomes everything that I've ever wanted it to be? Aya put her X at 95. I want you to practice this. Take a decision that you're considering. It's got some unknowns on the other side of it. Write out those unknowns and then assign happiness points to each of those outcomes. How many happiness points do you get if this happens? How many happiness points would you get if that happens? And next week, I'm going to show you how to combine those together.